Cleveland had streets where even daylight wasn't strong enough to chase the darkness away. Rubble was scattered across broken sidewalks, walls scarred with old graffiti. In places like these, even pain was treated like entertainment. That afternoon, two boys turned a living creature into their game. Ethan, 13, tall, with eyes that always burned with defiance. Beside him was Kyle, a year younger, thin, always looking to his friend for direction. Together, they chased a Doberman puppy no more than 3 months old. The pup was so thin its ribs pushed through the patchy black coat. Ears drooped, its belly as hollow, as if nothing lived inside. Each step wobbled, breath ragged, yet the laughter behind drove it forward. "Faster, Kyle!" Ethan shouted, hurling a rock that clattered hard against the street. Kyle threw too, but his hand shook. The stone veered off, grazing the pup's front leg. A thin scratch. A strangled cry tore from the Doberman's throat. The sound didn't slow them. It made them laugh louder. The kind of laugh that was sharp, empty, echoing down a deserted street. The puppy veered left, darting into an alley. It didn't know the path was a dead end, boxed in by 2 brick walls. It only followed instinct, searching for escape, but when it hit the cold wall, it froze. There was nowhere else to go. Panting hard, mouth gaping, strings of saliva fell to the bricks. Its legs trembled, unable to hold. It collapsed, dust clinging to the filthy fur. Ethan stepped forward, smirking. Now it's trapped. See that, Kyle? Now it gets fun. A broken stick weighed heavily in his hand. Kyle hung back, swallowing hard. He saw the pup's wide, wet eyes, begging. But Ethan was waiting. And in Kyle's small world, following Ethan was always easier than standing against him. The Doberman pressed against the wall, tail pinned tight. Its body shrank, eyes darting for an exit that didn't exist, shaking like a rag about to tear. Ethan raised the stick. Kyle gripped a stone, not sure what to do. And then, silence. The laughter stopped. Only the dog's labored breathing filled the narrow alley. At the far end, a figure appeared. No words. Just a shape standing against the last weak light of day. The orange sun edged its outline, spilling across the bricks. Ethan squinted, frowning. Kyle blinked fast. The Doberman lifted its head. For the first time during the chase, it didn't look at its tormentors. It fixed its gaze on the figure. In those exhausted eyes, beneath all the terror, flickered something new. Something it had never known before. Hope. The moment stretched taut, like a string pulled to breaking. Ethan's stick stayed raised, but his arms stiffened. Kyle took half a step back, sweat pooling in his palm. Both boys felt it. Something had shifted. Small, but heavy enough to weigh down the air. The pup whimpered, weak, yet carrying far. Ears flat, eyes locked on the stranger. It didn't know who this was. Didn't know what would come next. But instinct whispered, this might be the only chance. On a street where laughter usually meant cruelty, that sudden presence marked a turning point. And all of them, Ethan, Kyle, the trembling pup, were about to face something none of them expected. The figure at the mouth of the alley moved closer, each step firm against the concrete. When the fading light brushed across her face, the boys recognized her. Emily Carter. She was 24, slight in frame, but with eyes that burned bright. Every street in Cleveland knew her. She had grown up here, where abandoned houses outnumbered open stores, where survival left little room for noticing suffering at your feet. But Emily was different. Even as a child, she was the girl who carried home broken-winged birds, the one who split her sandwich with stray cats at school. That evening, Emily had just left the diner, her apron still stuffed in her bag, her hair faint with grease and coffee. She thought only of a shower, then a few pages of her nursing textbook. But the sounds had pulled her in, the hollow laughter, the crack of something heavy on pavement, the desperate cry that cut through. Now she stood before them, a Doberman pup slumped against the wall, ribs jutting through a dark, matted coat, legs trembling. Ethan clutched a stick. Kyle, a rock. "What are you doing?" Emily's voice cut sharp as a blade. Ethan arched a brow, unfazed. "It's just a stray," he shrugged. "Who cares?" Kyle shifted, eyes sliding away. Ethan pressed on. "It's a bag of bones that barks. Nobody wants it. It's worthless." Emily stepped closer, locking on the taller boy. "That bag of bones is alive." "It feels pain. It knows fear. And you think it's fun to make it suffer?" The alley froze. The pup's ragged breath filled the silence, joined by Kyle's racing heart. "There are strays everywhere." Ethan shot back, voice harder now. "If we don't do anything, it'll just die on the street anyway." Emily shook her head slowly. Her tone dropped, each word weighted. "Here's the difference. No living being deserves to be tortured. No one has the right to turn suffering into a game. If you can't see that, the problem isn't the dog. The problem is you." Kyle sucked in air. The rock slipped from his hand. He glanced at the pup, then back at Ethan. His face wavered between fear and doubt. Ethan faltered, speechless for a few beats. He wanted to retort, but found nothing. All he managed was a stubborn curl of his lip. "You're not our mom." "Stay out of it." Emily didn't flinch. She squared her shoulders. "I don't have to be your mother to know right from wrong. You want to act tough? Beating on a puppy proves nothing but cowardice." The silence thickened. Ethan's hand trembled around the stick. Kyle dropped his gaze, stepping back once, then again. In the corner, the Doberman lifted its head. Dust rimmed its eyes, red and raw, but as it saw the woman standing firm, its folded ears twitched. For the first time since the chase began, it didn't look at the boys with the weapons. It looked at her. In that stare, beneath the terror, a thin light sparked. The possibility of trust. Emily felt it. Her chest tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "You can walk away right now, but I'm not moving." Ethan glared a moment longer, then dropped the stick with a clatter. "Not worth it," he muttered, turning on his heel. Kyle hesitated, then hurried after him. Only Emily and the pup remained. The boy's footsteps faded, leaving just the whistle of wind between the brick and the pup's ragged breathing. Emily lowered herself slowly to the ground. She held out a hand, not touching, only near enough for the dog to see. Her voice softened to a whisper. "It's okay, kid. I'm not like them. I won't hurt you." The Doberman didn't move, but its eyes locked on hers, and in that moment the thinnest strand of trust tied itself between them, an unspoken promise of a journey neither of them yet knew would test them to the edge. Emily stayed kneeling on the cold brick floor, hand extended, her voice soft as a blanket laid over the tension in the air. The Doberman pup stared at that hand, ears pressed flat, breath wheezing. It didn't come closer, but it didn't retreat either. For a creature hunted down, not running was already a sign. Emily knew she couldn't force it. She slipped off her worn sweater, spreading it gently across the pup's back. Just a thin layer of fabric, but warmer than the brick wall it leaned against. The dog shuddered, let out a faint whimper, then fell quiet. "It's okay, kid," she whispered. "No one's going to hurt you now." Once she was sure it wouldn't fight, Emily gathered the frail body in her arms. The weight startled her. It was so light, more skeleton than flesh, each bone sharp beneath the dirty fur. The pup didn't resist. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe somehow it understood this embrace was not another stick or stone. Emily wrapped the sweater tighter around the trembling body and carried it out of the alley. On the street, a few people glanced her way, curious, indifferent, but no one asked, no one stopped. In Cleveland, people were used to turning their backs. Her apartment was one small bedroom, with peeling paint and furniture scavenged from thrift stores. But when she opened the door and set the pup down on an old blanket in the corner, the place became a refuge. For the first time in days, it wasn't surrounded by laughter or blows. Emily sat on the floor, watching. The pup curled in on itself, eyes wide with caution, its thin tail clamped against its side, the whole body trembling like a leaf. "You need a name," she murmured, half to soothe herself. "Something better than Mutt." She thought for a moment. Its eyes met hers, tired but defiant, as if no matter how many times it had been knocked down, it hadn't disappeared completely. Emily exhaled, nodding. "Chance. That'll be your name. Because you deserve one." She opened the fridge, almost empty, just leftovers from her shift. Then she remembered the scraps of boiled chicken she'd brought home from the diner. She shredded them carefully, mixed them with plain rice, and set the cracked bowl in front of him. "Here, Chance. Eat." At first, he didn't move. He only looked at the bowl, then at her, suspicion clouded with exhaustion. Time dragged until it felt like an hour. Then his nose twitched. He leaned forward, sniffing. A minute later, his tongue brushed a piece of chicken. Emily held her breath. When he began eating, small bites, clumsy but desperate, her eyes stung. Each chew seemed to pull him one step back toward life. When only a few grains of rice remained, Chance collapsed, spent but calmer. He rested his head on the blanket and sighed. Emily leaned back against the wall, watching. She had never felt silence so precious. No cruel laughter, no stones rolling on concrete, just a small dog, still trembling, but breathing. She pulled the blanket gently over his fragile frame. "Sleep, Chance," she whispered. "Tomorrow will be different." "I promise." In that poor, peeling room, a fragile beginning had taken root. Not a victory, not even safety yet. But the first step toward trust is between a young woman and a hunted pup. And from that moment on, neither of them was alone. The next morning, sunlight filtered through thin curtains, falling across the small body curled on the blanket. Chance slept deeply, chest rising slowly, flinching now and then as if shadows from the night still clung to him. Emily sat nearby, a cold cup of coffee in her hand, her mind restless. The joy of knowing he had survived had lasted only a few hours. Reality was already pressing in. She knew keeping a sick puppy in this neighborhood would never be simple, and trouble knocked sooner than she expected. By noon, as she rinsed the sweater stained with Chance's dried blood, a pounding rattle shook the door. Emily opened it to find Mrs. Miller, Ethan's mother, filling the frame. Her face was taut, her eyes cold. "I hear you stole my son's dog," she said, voice flat. "Ethan told me clearly. It was theirs. You had no right." Emily clenched her fists, forcing her tone steady. "Mrs. Miller, that pup was dying in the alley. Your son and his friend weren't caring for it. They were hurting it." "Kids play rough, that's all?" Mrs. Miller waved dismissively, contempt flashing in her eyes. "You don't get to meddle in how I raise my son." Heat surged into Emily's face. Her reply came firm, each word deliberate. "Your son wasn't playing. He was beating a defenseless life. And I won't stand by and watch." Mrs. Miller drew in a sharp breath, but said nothing more. She turned, leaving behind a cold warning. "You'll regret this." When the door shut, Emily leaned against the wall, heart racing. She knew she had just painted a target on her own back. In the days that followed, it became clear. At work, whispers trailed her. She thinks she's some kind of hero. It's just a dog. What's the big deal? Even at the diner, customers tossed barbs when she served their food. Sure, this plate doesn't come with dog hair? Her manager called her in. Emily, the complaints are piling up. I know you care about animals, but this is this job. If you're late again because of that dog, I can't cover for you. Emily nodded, biting her lip. She had no fight left. Her paycheck was already carved into rent, nursing books, and now, vet bills. At the clinic, the veterinarian examined Chance's frail frame and shook his head. Severe malnutrition, parasites. The wounds are infected. It'll take time and medication. But he's got fight in him. How much? Emily asked, her voice unsteady. The bill hit her stomach like a stone. She gripped the paper, paralyzed, until her eyes dropped to Chance. He stared back, dark eyes wide, silent. No whine, no bark. Just trust. Emily drew in a long breath. Do everything he needs. I'll figure it out. That night, after a long shift, she came home, shoulders aching, hands trembling. But when she opened the door, Chance was on his feet, wobbling, yet trying to wag his tail. The thin whip of it trembled like a blade of grass, awkward but determined. Tears blurred Emily's eyes. Every whisper, every sneer, every bill stacking high, faded in that moment. She sank to the floor, stroking his head. We'll get through this, Chance. You and me. No one can take away what we're building. But deep inside, Emily knew. This fight was only beginning. That night, Emily finished her shift later than usual. Autumn wind swept through dark streets, chasing scraps of paper across the pavement. She pulled her old coat tight, thinking of Chance curled on the blanket in her room. The thought was a small flame, urging her feet faster. But near her apartment, something was wrong. The living room window was shattered, and glass was scattered across the entry. Emily's heart slammed. She rushed inside, flicking on the light. Chaos. The room was torn apart. The blanket is empty. The leash by the door is gone. And in the space where a fragile shape should have been waiting, only cold silence. Emily staggered. Chance? Her voice cracked. No bark, no claws tapping on the floor, just wind whistling through the broken pane. Then she saw the note taped to the wall. Scrawled letters. Told you he won't last. Ethan. Her knees buckled. She ripped the paper down, her hands shaking so hard that it tore into pieces. Breath hitched, throat closing. The air felt sucked from the room, leaving her in raw panic. She grabbed the phone and dialed 911, her words spilled, trembling. My dog. He's been taken. I know who did it. Ethan Miller. Please, you have to help. The dispatcher's voice was flat, merciless. Ma'am, does the dog have a microchip or ownership documents? No. I just rescued him, but... Then all we can do is log a report. This is a civil dispute. You should address it with the parents directly. The reply cut like a blade. Emily shouted, This isn't a dispute. It's a life. But the line went dead. The phone slipped to the floor. Emily sank, clutching the empty blanket. Chance's warmth still clung faintly to the fabric, but the body was gone. She pressed her face into it, tears soaking deep. The promises she had whispered, You're safe now. I'll protect you, echoed back as lies. The night stretched endlessly. Emily drifted through the room like a ghost, haunted by visions of Ethan's mocking laughter, by Chance's terrified eyes dragged away. The images looped, tearing at every nerve. By dawn, whispers already rippled through the neighborhood. The girl lost her dog. People shook their heads, smirking. To them, it was nothing more than a joke. At the diner, Emily spilled coffee and endured a customer's harsh rebuke. Her manager pulled her aside, frowning. "Emily, you're not focused." "I can't keep covering for you." She only nodded, too heavy to defend herself. That evening, back in the hollow apartment, she found a small rock in the middle of the floor. Tied to it, another note. "Forget him. He's ours now." Emily collapsed, hands trembling too much to untie the string. Her throat burned, sobs breaking in jagged bursts. For the first time since she had carried the pup out of the alley, doubt crushed her. She had given him hope, only to see it stolen again. Had she dragged out his suffering instead of saving him? Was her love too small against the cruelty that surrounded them? She curled by the broken window, streetlight washing her pale face. Only the whistle of wind through fractured glass and her muffled cries filled the room. That night, Emily's faith broke, and for the first time, she whispered what she had never dared. "Maybe love isn't enough." That evening, as the Cleveland sky deepened into bruised purple, a knock rattled Emily's door. She dragged herself over, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. On the porch stood Kyle, hands buried in the pockets of a torn hoodie, face pale. "I need to talk," he stammered, glancing around as if afraid to be seen. "It's about the dog." Emily's chest clenched. "Where is Chance?" Kyle swallowed hard. "Ethan. He locked him in the old warehouse on Grant Street. Said he wanted to prove it wasn't worth living. Jason's with him, but I can't take it anymore. He's suffering. Emily's knees nearly gave out. But through the haze, fire sparked. She grabbed her coat and keys. "Take me." Now Grant Street lay silent. A row of abandoned factories, windows shattered, walls rusting, weeds swallowing the pavement. Kyle led the way, each step dragging. "In there," he whispered, pointing to a bent side door. Emily drew a breath. Her heart pounded, but her eyes were steady. She shoved the door open. The stench of damp and rust filled her lungs. Inside was black, broken only by slivers of light slicing through cracks. Then she heard it, a faint, raspy whine from deep in the shadows. "Chance," she whispered. A weak thump answered, the scrape of a tail against iron. Emily ran toward it. At the far wall, a rusted cage. Inside, the Doberman pup curled tight, fur matted, eyes glazed. But when he saw her, his thin tail beat against the bars, desperate, alive. Tears blurred her vision as she dropped to her knees. "I'm here, kid. I found you." She reached for the lock when a voice slid from the dark. "Well, well. Look who showed up." Ethan stepped forward, Jason behind him. A steel rod glinted in Ethan's grip. His smile was cold, twisted by arrogance on a boy's face. "I knew you'd come," he sneered. "You care too much. That's a weakness." Emily rose, heart hammering, voice unshaken. "Enough, Ethan." "Let him go." Jason glanced at the pup, then at Emily. He said nothing, only shifted back. Ethan smirked. "Why should I?" "It's nothing. You think saving a stray makes you some kind of hero? The world doesn't change." Emily stepped closer, eyes locked on his. "Maybe not the whole world. But for him, everything changes. You don't get to decide the worth of a life." The air stretched taut, humming with tension. Ethan gripped the rod tighter, but his hand trembled. In Emily's gaze, he saw no fear, only a strength that wouldn't bend. Then another voice broke in, shaky but firm. "You're wrong, Ethan. Kyle stepped from behind Emily. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear. I can't keep doing this. It's not fun. It's wrong. And I'm not standing with you anymore. Ethan snapped around, stunned. What the hell are you doing, Kyle? Standing on the right side, Kyle whispered, but the words rang through the warehouse. Jason hesitated. He looked at Ethan, then Kyle. At last, he dropped his gaze. His silence was answer enough. Ethan's face burned red. He growled, then kicked the cage hard. Take it if you want. It's not worth the trouble. He shoved past, storming out. Jason trailed behind, wordless. Emily's hands shook as she worked the lock until it snapped open. The door swung wide and Chance stumbled forward, collapsing into her arms. Weak, trembling, but alive. She held him close, tears sliding down her cheeks, soaking into his ragged fur. I've got you now, kid. I won't lose you again. Kyle stood nearby, eyes rimmed red. I'm sorry, he choked. I should have stopped him sooner. Emily looked up, still cradling Chance. You did the right thing now. That's what matters. Outside, wind whistled through broken steel frames, but in Emily's arms the small Doberman drew breath again. And in Kyle's eyes, a new light flickered, the belief that compassion could outlast cruelty. The next morning, soft sunlight spilled into the small apartment. Emily sat quietly in the corner, watching Chance sleep on the old blanket. For the first time in weeks, his breathing was steady, no flinching, no shrinking back from fear. His thin tail twitched whenever her hand brushed along his back. He was home. Not a rusted cage, not a stone-strewn alley, but a true shelter. In the days that followed, Emily poured herself into his care. She fed him small meals, slipped in the vet's medicine, and warmed his body with clean water. Slowly, Chance regained strength. The wounds knit. His ragged coat began to grow back, and light returned to his eyes. But the greatest healing wasn't in his body. It was in his trust. Chance began to shadow Emily around the room, ears perked, eyes fixed on her as if to say, I won't let you vanish. One evening after her long shift, Emily collapsed in a chair. Chance lay his small muzzle on her knee and sighed in peace. Emily broke into tears, not from exhaustion, but from realizing she had done what once seemed impossible, turned fear into faith. The story didn't stay within her four walls. Word spread fast about Chance's rescue from the warehouse. At first, the whispers lingered. That trouble girl's in over her head with another dog. But slowly, glances shifted. A neighbor left a bag of dog food by her door. A schoolboy, once quick to throw rocks, now waved shyly at Chance. Even Kyle changed. Every day he showed up, carrying dog food bought with pocket money. At first, Chance stayed wary, but with Emily near, he allowed the boy to sit close, even to brush a gentle hand across his head. Forgiveness, given by a dog without words, reshaped a child's heart. Ethan was different. After the warehouse, he kept his distance. Rumor said his parents had cracked down hard. When his eyes did flick toward Emily, there was no arrogance left, only shame tangled with regret. One Saturday, Emily dared what she hadn't before. She took Chance to the park. Her hands shook as she unclipped the leash, terrified he would freeze at the sound of shouting children or a bouncing ball. But what happened silenced her. Chance paused, glanced at her for permission. Emily smiled, nodded, and he stepped onto the grass. The sun spread gold, wind stirred. Chance sniffed the earth, flicked his ears, then took a few slow steps, his tail lifting, swaying awkwardly in the air. A ball rolled toward him. He froze, but instead of cowering, he lowered his head and nudged it with his muzzle. A little girl laughed, ran over, and stroked his head. Chance blinked, then tentatively, wagged his tail. Emily covered her mouth. Tears spilled. It wasn't just recovery. It was a victory. The dog, once branded worthless, was learning to trust again. To live, not just survive. She sat on a bench, watching him play in the sunlight. Inside her, the wounds began to heal too. That night, back home, Emily gathered Chance in her arms. "You did it, kid," she whispered. "You proved them wrong." No life is meaningless. She knew hardship still loomed. Unpaid bills, a fragile job, uncertain studies. But with Chance beside her, everything felt different. For Emily, this journey was never only about saving a dog. It was proof that compassion could root itself even in the darkest places. Those voiceless creatures like Chance still teach us resilience, faith, and the power of unconditional love. As night fell, Chance curled on the sofa, his breathing soft as a lullaby. Emily looked at him, whispering, "From now on, you'll never be afraid again." And in her heart echoed one truth: love isn't weakness. It is the only strength strong enough to transform people, to save a life, to remind the world that even the quietest cries deserve to be heard. That was when Emily understood. She hadn't just saved Chance. Chance had saved her too. And you? Did you feel your heart stir watching Emily and Chance's journey? A young woman, a broken pup, and together they created a miracle. If Emily had walked past that alley, Chance might not be here, but she stopped, and that single choice changed everything. We often believe we're too small to make a difference. But Emily proved otherwise. With compassion, she not only saved an innocent dog, but also awakened empathy in a community that once turned away. What about you? Have you ever reached out to rescue a lost, injured, or trembling animal on the road? Share your story in the comments. Your moment of kindness might inspire someone else to pause and choose compassion over indifference. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. Every share is another chance for people to know no life is worthless, and love can change an entire world. Thank you for walking with us, and with Chance, through a journey of tears, but also of hope. Stay with us, because many more stories are waiting to awaken the humanity inside us all.